What is up, people, and welcome and happy Wednesday to you all. So I thought today, sorry, this is completely impromptu. I just finished my fasted cardio for today. I just thought I'd run through a little 5-minute knowledge bomb because I haven't got one up this week, and it seems appropriate with the topic being the truth about peak week. So what are the do's, what are the don'ts, what should you do, what shouldn't you do, what has no fucking reference on anything. Okay, let's start off. What is peak week? Well, peak week, as we all know, is a week, generally a week before the show. It could be 5 days, it could be 7 days, but let's classify it for simple matters as peak week is 7 days before the show, is when peak week starts. Sorry, I'm doing this on my iPhone rather than my nice expensive camera that has zero usage. So, peak week, what is it? It's just a date. Guys, it's literally just a week before you compete. That's it. If you're not ready at the start of peak week, you're not going to be ready at the end of peak week. It's not a fucking miracle cure. You can maybe progress up one tier, maybe. Okay, let's use a tier scale. So let's say a tier scale of 5. 1 being fucking 16 weeks out, 5 being crisp, ready, and good to go. If you're at, say, stage 4, you may be able to sneak into the stage 5 by using some protocols during peak week. If you're at fucking 3, there's no way you're getting up to fucking 5, guys. You may be able to creep it into 4, but you're still not going to be plus ready. So emphasis on you have to be ready a week out, and peak week is just to kind of, I'd say, crisp up, clarify, bring out your intensity, rest your body a little bit, decrease volume, increase intensity. A lot of people make the mistake of fucking going absolutely crazy during peak week and suddenly upping their training volume, doing like 1,000 repetitions on each body part to carb deplete. Guys, if you're taking in 220 grams, 250 grams of carbs during peak week, you're not going to carb deplete. You're not going to glycogen deplete. And there's no real issue. If you've stabilized and you've leaned out using carbs, relatively high carbs and a low fat diet, there's no real point dropping carbs in peak week. It's probably going to have a detrimental effect in terms of you're going to feel shit. There's no point. You've been leaning down very well through the 16, 12, 10 weeks or whatever you've been doing during peak week, during prep. So why strip carbs completely moving into peak week? Makes no sense, right? But if you've been steadily progressing, if carbs have been your major macronutrient that you've been almost like dropping further into a deficit, so maybe you started on like around 300, 16 weeks out, and then you drop it down to 2, drop it down to 180, and then you finish up going into peak week at around about 100 grams of carbs, yes, there may be an argument for you to drop carbs down to circa 50, 60 grams for 3 to 4 days, and then start to load up and with carbohydrates maybe a day or 2 days or 3 days before show. Carbohydrate loading, is it necessary? Yes, in essence it is. And for the more muscular physique, it's even more appropriate. So if you're looking at, for example, bikini girls, do I carb them up? Yes, I generally give them higher carbs. If they've been on low carbs throughout peak week or generally throughout prep, I will give them carbohydrates either a day before. For example, let's clarify this. So my amateur's competing on Friday at the WFF Worlds. It's an evening show. There's no prejudging. So we've got all of Friday to play with pretty much. So for them, I've carved them up. I've given them high carbohydrates on Thursday, and we will see how they look on Friday morning, depending on whether we need more carbohydrates or not, or whether we just stick to protein and fats or low carbohydrates. It really depends. It's all about monitoring and making assessments and making judgments based on how you feel and how you look. When you lead into the more muscular physique, like male fitness, even female fitness, bodybuilding, things like this is when these protocols have more of an effect on you, because what are you trying to do? You're trying to increase the volume of your muscle tissue without increasing water retention, or you're not going to increase body fat. That's probably never going to happen during peak week because of the amount of deficit you're going to be on. So when you're a more muscular physique, things like carbohydrate depletion and loading will work better for you. Again, if you're a bodybuilder on fucking 300 grams of carbs leading into peak week, stripping your carbs down to 50 is going to be completely negligent, and there's no reason to do that. Stripping your carbs maybe down to 200 might be an idea, so you can load up, and depending on how you feel, you may do a preload, or you may load 3 days leading to the show. Just remember, the bigger you are, the more carbohydrates you'll need to categorically fill up. It's not really fill up, but basically, I mean, I've heard stories of people loading in 1,000 grams of carbs for 4 days leading into the show. That's just fucking unnecessary. Your body's not going to be able to handle that. You're not going to utilize all those carbohydrates. There's no one in this fucking world that's going to be as carb depleted going into and warrant loading up on 4,000 grams of carbohydrates. You must have really been hitting it low carb during peak prep. Okay, salt manipulation. Is salt manipulation good? What do I do? So I generally lower salt intake. I don't cut out things like natural salt intake, like, you know, if there's naturally occurring sodium in meats and fish and stuff like this. No, I don't cut out sodium or naturally occurring sodium, but I will remove salt from their diet around about 4 to 5 days out of the show. Why do I do this? Is it necessary? Well, I say for bikini girls, maybe not, but it's there. There's a possibility of it could have an effect. It won't have a negative effect, so why not do it? This is the way I see. So for bikini girls, I normally just diet them into the show. So if they're, you know, from 12 weeks out until the show day, I don't really kind of classify that peak week. I'll just diet them through into the show. They get a little bit etchy normally about this because they're like, oh my God, peak week, oh, I'm going to fucking go crazy. Like, oh, what am I going to do? But I almost have to give them, well, of course I give them a peak week plan, but I almost have to, you know, make a few changes, maybe unnecessary changes in peak week just to kind of keep the client happy, if that makes sense. Because everyone's got this this whole like base level idea of what peak week should be. Fucking no salt, no carbs, fucking train like a monster, 3 hours of cardio a day, fucking high reps, all this kind of stuff. If for example, my clients, if they've been doing cardio, say for example, they're doing 50 minutes of low intensity every day in the last 8 weeks leading to the show, I would keep that low intensity in during peak week and I'd get them doing a short, so I've got my girls and my guys, well, no, just some of my girls. I've got my girls in peak week on things like plyometric sessions, metabolic sessions, metabolic conditioning sessions, and kind of like high rep, not depletion workouts, but just high rep resistance sessions, focusing on like full body. Except, you know, their last loaded session, legs loaded session, is always about a week out, 5 days out, minimum kind of 4 to 5 days out. Why do we do this? Why do we not do loaded leg sessions leading into the show? It's fine to do things like body weight and, you know, plyometrics and stuff like that leading into the show. But a loaded leg session is only going to make your legs swell. You know when you've had a fucking killer squat leg session and your legs are fucking swollen, like they look massive, but there's no real detail into them? That's because all the sarcomeres, you know, generally your muscles have almost been injured. There's a lot of inflammation in there. There's a lot of muscle and glycogen drawing in and waste products in there, and that causes them to swell. That's great if you want to have massive legs, but we're looking for clarity on stage. We're looking for kind of muscular definition. So that's why we don't want to have a loaded leg session kind of 2-3 days out or even a day before the show, because you'll make your legs swell and you'll decrease the amount of clarity you'll have, for example, through your quadriceps or through your hamstrings. And by clarity, I mean the visible kind of, you know, when you really see a guy or girl with shredded quads, when you see like the VMO, the vastus lateralis, intermedialis, all popping. That's basically why, so that's always good. And I do that for males and females. What else do we talk about for peak week? Talked about sodium. Oh yeah, I haven't actually talked about what I do. So on the day of the show, I normally load them up with sodium up to, depending on the person, up to around about 1.5, sometimes up to 5 grams of sodium during the day. Just kind of like with their meals. This would be kind of added sodium. Naturally occurring sodium is there anyway. So things like, you know, pink Himalayan salt, or maybe even just table salt. It's fine. It's not the greatest, but it's fine, and it does the same. It does the same thing as kind of pink Himalayan leading into the show. Why do I do this? With loaded carbohydrates and with water. What do carbohydrates draw into the muscle cell with? About one part carbohydrate, about 3 parts water. So that's why people always say they report themselves fluffy when they're on carbohydrates, or kind of like watery when they're on carbohydrates. If you're lean enough, this will not happen. This will not happen. All that water, all that glycogen, all that sodium is going to be drawn straight into the muscle tissue, and it's going to give you that volumized look, that fucking lean, crazy volume. And on benefit for that, all your extracellular water is actually going to be almost drawn intracellular by the period of osmosis. So you will be fucking ripped, big, volumized muscle, and still be very kind of, what do they call it? Dry? Yeah, dry. But, when you're like pulling off cling film, like from your skin, that's essentially what what we're looking for. But that's only for those kind of categories. So we're like men's fitness, female fitness. Again, even female fitness in the WBFF can't be too super veiny and dry. But, this is what we do, things like bodybuilding and stuff like that. When you talk about bikini, of course, there's a disparity between UK BFF NPC and WBFF bikini. WBFF bikini is softer. It's a softer look. Yes, you can have an outline of abdominals. Even some girls do have abdominals, but it's all about the characteristics of the body. Like, they need to be full, they need to be feminine, no gaunt faces, pretty, beautiful, walking on stage like they own it. Like, it's a very kind of, it's almost like a walking beauty pageant. So for WBFF bikini, it can't be too lean, and that's why, I've had previous years with the WBFF, people have always said I've brought my bikini girls in too lean. So in the past kind of couple of years, I made sure, for my kind of opinion, to bring them in around about 2-3 weeks out, which would be my opinion, and it seems to be working very well. It's a lot better look, it's a lot fuller look, and they seem to like it. The judges seem to like it. So it's all based on what the federation and what the judges are looking for, not what you think's best as a coach or as a client or as an athlete. So what else do we have to talk about? Peak week, cheat meals. So I'm just looking at the time because I've got to get a train about 15 minutes up to Hampstead, but we're all good for now. Cheat meals, slutty refeeds, are they warranted in peak week, or kind of as like a kind of carbohydrate fat load leading into the show? This is the way I think. With a new client, I will never do them, just because I've never worked with that client before. I wouldn't know how they respond, and the possibility is if they have something in their slutty cheat meal that they're intolerant to, or they don't respond well, they're going to look shit on stage, and that's 16 weeks in the fucking bin for you. I would rather them maybe look slightly less full, but still great clarity, lean, ripped, looking great on stage, rather than risking a slutty refeed, say a night before or the day of the show, if it's an evening show, and then become watery and feeling shit and bloated on stage. That's my kind of view on that. If I've got a couple of clients, and if I have a client that's fucking ridiculously lean leading in, like a couple of years back, I remember Kit Redfern, she was crazy conditioned for bikini. She's just getting more, like, I was filling her up in the weeks leading up to the show, but she kept on getting more and more and more conditioning. It's what I like to call like metabolic overdrive, when literally no matter what you throw at the body, it's going to strip fat and you're going to hold on to that lean mass. So I always say, like, for her, like, we were loading her up in peak week and like before the show with fucking Krispy Kremes, pancakes, burgers, all kinds of shit, and she still came on shredded on stage. For me, she looked fucking amazing, but she was too lean for bikini. So yeah, that's my, if you've done slutty refeeds and things like, you've had like a burger and chips before, the night before, prejudging on the show the next day, and it's worked well for you, it's worked well for you. You've got a history of it. You know how your body will respond to it. So if your coach doesn't put this in and you think, no, it's really worked well for me, you have to discuss them with your coach, and you say, okay, this has really worked well for me in the past, can I do it? And if they say, no, don't do it, then, well, they're not really listening to you, are they? So they're a bad coach. So, to wrap it all up in terms of do I believe in slutty refeeds before peak week, before the show? If you've done them before and they worked well, for sure, take them. If you're crazy, super fucking lean and you are ready like 3 weeks out from the show, yes, it's probably going to be beneficial for you because your body is just going to utilize that shit. If you're umming and ahhing and, not feeling quite ready, or you feel good and you feel really good about, leading into the show, and all you need is a little carb up, stick to your foods that you've been having during peak prep, which is like, your either clean foods if you're a flexible diet or whatever, but don't take anything during peak week or the night before the show that you haven't incorporated in your peak prep, like the last kind of 12 weeks, because there is always the possibility of it not agreeing with you, and you don't want something not agreeing you when you're on the stage, whether it be giving you a bloat, whether you're giving you a little bit of water retention, or whether you be running off the bathroom in your little skimpy wimpies and staying there for 3 hours with a sore ass. But yeah, what else do we have to cover on peak week? As I said, this is kind of impulsive